and we have 20 questions from Oliver Art Center. My name is Mercedes Michalowski. I'm Executive Director, and we're going to run right into question number 1. Will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ron Gianola, an oil painter from Honor, Michigan. My wife and I are originally from Detroit area, and but I've been up in our area now for maybe 30 years. Live just the other side of Honor on the Platte River.
Okay, so question number 2 is, what is your favorite medium?
My favorite medium is, I'm an oil painter, predominantly, although I've done a lot of acrylic painting and drawing and pastels, but for years now, certainly it's oils for me. They're a little more malleable, a little more flexible, and for the art that I'm doing now, it just lends itself to what I'm doing a little more than acrylics. I've done work in acrylics. They're good as well, but oils is my thing. That's what I learned on.
Okay. Well, that kind of leads into the next question of, when did your interest in art begin?
I began pretty young. I was born in Detroit. I was a car guy, pretty interested in car culture. And I could always draw pretty well, especially cars. I didn't think of myself as being maybe an artist per se in my early days. I was pretty much just drawing cars. And I had started to make that a career. I went to art school for it. And they felt at the time, if you were going to be a well-rounded industrial designer, you should have a background in fine arts, in figure drawing, art history. They figured correctly. And so that was really my introduction to art personally, was in college in Detroit. Went to what is now the Center for Creative Studies, right next to the Detroit Institute of Arts. And I went there for quite a while off and on. So it was quite a varied experience. I eventually went all the way from industrial design over to fine art. So it was the whole spectrum, the whole gamut down there.
Okay. So who and what inspires your art?
Well, these days I've got several influences. I work pretty abstractly, and they are originally based on, I had a long landscape phase up here in northern Michigan, so my abstractions now are still based somewhat on the landscape, and then in a broader sense, maybe on the natural world in general, all the way from maybe cellular forms on up to galaxies and sea foam, and just all these natural shapes and patterns and things are all in there. And I've always had a great interest in music. And so they're starting to be actually based on sort of musical compositions as well, in terms of harmony and dissonance, rhythm, motion, all those kinds of things. I'm not a classical composer or anything, but I'm imagining that's what they concern themselves with. So that's my take on it.
Okay. Well, you're doing a fabulous job of leading right into the next question. So the next question is, if your artwork were to be classified as a musical genre, what genre would it be?
Yeah, well, probably jazz. I mean, I grew up on rock and roll in Detroit, certainly in the heyday, and then gravitated to jazz. Instrumental jazz, mostly, it was that creative take on it. And now it's even sort of classical, contemporary, chamber, classical, instrumental things. But probably all in all, it would be jazz. And particularly years ago, I started accidentally, I paint to music a lot, but it's got to be somewhat in the background. Otherwise, I just can't. You end up focusing on the music and not on your painting, So I put on an album from the European label called ECM Records. They've been at it for 40 years. They've got 1,200 albums out. Started as a jazz label and branched out now into all kinds of creative music. So a lot of what I listen to would be ECM jazz, which is kind of a a niche that isn't quite so much information. It's still wonderful, but I can paint to it. You know, I could actually get something done instead of but basically wind up listening to jazz and not painting so much, you know, so which could happen.
And you're a musician also.
I've actually been a drummer since I was 13. So I won't say how many years that is, but it's lots of years on that stool. Mhm. But I don't really,
So,
I don't gig around. I mean, a while ago, I realized as much as I love that, my painting sort of took over. You know, I kind of made the conscious decision to focus on my painting rather than playing music. And so, so I sit in and things, but I don't play regularly.
okay. So if you could only use the shades and tones of just one color in your artwork for
Yeah.
the next few years, what color would that be?
Well, these days it's probably violet. You know, I always go, seems like as the years go by, when I was a landscape painter, it was all the cool blues and greens, trees and sky and water. And then when I got into abstraction, I started using all these really hot, warm colors, yellow, orange, reds. And then I had a sort of a, what, I don't know, a maroon phase, magenta phase. Seemed like no matter what I painted with that, it just worked. Now it's violet. So I don't know if I want to do that for 3 years or the rest of my life, but it's definitely working. It would be my favorite color. I don't know why that is. Some of them just work at times better than others. So
Okay, well, that makes sense.
yeah.
So what is your favorite tool in your art toolkit?
My favorite tool I happen to have in my hand. It just so happens, a palette knife, which I had got into years ago. If you don't know what a palette knife is, it's a triangular metal knife, and it looks awkward to paint with. When I first saw them, I thought, how can anybody paint with this? It's like painting, you know, compared to a brush, it just seemed very mechanical, and it was like painting with a screwdriver or something. But it isn't, you know, it's designed to, it does quite a bit. And so I use it predominantly now to mix colors. You can wipe it clean, you get a nice clean blade to start with a new color. And I apply it with a knife, do a lot of scraping and layering. So it's really versatile. I use it all the time. I don't use it exclusively, but mainly.
Okay, so then what's your least favorite tool?
My least favorite tool, yeah, I forgot about that question. That would, what would that be? That would be an actual scraper, like a big knife blade I would use to scrape a painting down when it really isn't working. Oils tend to stay wet, so you could actually scrape it off days later, most of it, which is a sign, you know, you're going to make that major of a change. Of course, it's kind of a sign that this isn't working so well. So that doesn't happen a lot. Usually if I'm scraping now, it's to enhance what's there, not to just remove it in the sense it's a mistake. But there are times when you're scraping it off, you know, it's just better to, or maybe paint stripper, that'd be my least favorite. That's when it's really not working and it's dry. So I try not to go there, but it happens.
Okay,
Not often, fortunately, but
what is the best piece of advice you've been given?
the best piece of advice, yeah. Well, there's two. One, one is a joke from art school, and it said, if you can't make it good, make it big. And if you can't make it big, make it red. Okay, that's the joke. And the real one is from Constantine Brancusi, the sculptor, who said, seeing far is one thing, going there is another. And I always took that to mean, you know, you can have an art vision, which I like to think I have, but bringing it into reality is a lot of work, you know. And so, and younger people, you know, I was one of them, you know, maybe don't realize that, you know. So it's one thing to be able to see that goal, and it's another thing to actually arrive there.
I think that's a good bit of advice.
Which I wish he didn't tell me that, of course, I read it, but I wish I would have read it a little bit sooner, but
So do you prefer to work solo or in collaboration with others?
oh, I would definitely work solo, yeah, in almost everything. I am what you would call not a team player.
I think you're the first interview I've done that they've admitted they're not a team
I
player.
am definitely, my wife made me a sweatshirt one time that said not a team player on it. I've gotten better. It's got to be my team. If it's my team, I'm a team player. I'm just not. I think Jackson Brown, I saw one time, he's the same way. There was a quote, the musician, the singer, Jackson Brown. He said, another person with an idea is a real problem for me.
Well, I can understand that.
So I'm a painter, so I'm in my studio usually alone. There would normally be, no collaboration involved. So under the right circumstances, I'd like to think I'm a team player.
Okay. So this is kind of one of our fun questions. Which famous artist would make a good president of the United States?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a tough one. There'd probably be I would go with someone like maybe Miro or someone like Chagall, who I think is just the most dreamy, impractical person imaginable. Just to get past the normal business politician, just get someone in here who's just completely off the menu. I think that probably work pretty well now these days. I think we're ready for a completely radical change, someone who's just coming in here from outer space, which is what Miro would be, right? They would be looking on the completely creative side of things. That would be refreshing.
That would be actually. So sticking with this, what is your favorite meal?
Meal. Well, one would think it would be Italian, but I'm actually gone on sushi lately.
Okay.
My wife and I have spent a lot of time in Hawaii. It's everywhere in Hawaii, and I kind of fell in love with it years ago. We have a couple of great restaurants in our area, and I think part of it is because of what it looks like. If you get a real specialty roll, my God, it's beautiful. It's on this decorator plate, and the whole. So that may have something to do with it.
Yeah, they're small works of art.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this interview is actually taking place here at Oliver Art Center, but what type of art or which artist hangs on the walls in your home?
Well, I am happy to say it is, of course, mainly me. My house pretty much looks like the Oliver Art Gallery that we're in today. It's mostly mine. I've got a lot of work. I enjoy looking at it. And so it hangs up everywhere, partly not because it might be they're all just the greatest, but it's things I'm working on and things to remind myself. And so it's that way in the studio on a couple of walls and certainly in my house. Although I have friends of mine who are area artists, people I've met over the years out of here in our area as well as towards Traverse City. So I have some of their work as well.
Okay.
It's not just me. It's not all about me.
Although you're sitting in a gallery surrounded by your own work.
I am. Should we pan around and do that?
Pan around, yeah.
We are in a wonderful Oliver Art Gallery. I'll just pan this real quick. When this airs, this show will be over. So here it is, part of it anyhow.
Yeah.
Take a little peek over here. And this way. If I do say so myself, it looks great. You did a wonderful job here hanging it. Highly recommended. If it was me, I'd still be in here hanging it, so.
It was a lot of work, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
you did a wonderful job. It looks fabulous.
It's easy to make it look good when you've got good work to deal
Well,
with.
thank you.
So kind of, this touches on a topic we already talked about, but what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, geez. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to go completely there, that's for sure. But, you know, just in general, I think I would have told myself that it would be okay to, you know, I've spent a lot of time when I was younger crashing around from engineering to art and from one department in art school to another, and just sort of a lot of searching and indecision and dropping in and out of expensive schools. And it just seemed like total chaos when I was younger and through into my 20s. And somehow it all worked out splendidly. When I look back, I can see a great grand method to this madness, which was to get exactly where I am today. So it actually all worked out. It would have just been nice if someone could have told me that there is a chance of that happening, and to not be quite so upset when it just didn't, you know. I don't know what I expected, if it would all just going to happen at the end of the month or something rather than later on. But so you know, I guess the advice would be to just be a little bit patient and persevere, you know, be positive and persevere, and it'll all work out. Which if someone would have told me as a young man to be patient, whew, that would have not been the thing to say. That's another thing I am not known for, so.
Well,
Me a
most young
while.
people are not.
Took me a while, and it's not like I'm a master at it now either, don't get me wrong.
Very
But
few people are.
I'm better. We'll go that far.
Okay. So this is again one of our little fun questions. If you could time travel backward or forward to safely make art for a week,
Yeah.
what date would you choose, or what time
What
period would you choose?
Well, you know, geez, there would actually be a lot of them. There's so many interesting phases of human creativity. I would actually just go to New York when abstract expressionism started, and they were all starving. Right when they stopped starving, I could show up, and I just thought that was an amazing time in art history and in our country and in art, and I think my art even now is based on a lot of those precepts that came to bear in those days. So I think that would be great.
Okay,
And you'd be in New York.
true.
You wouldn't have to go to ancient Egypt.
That's true. So is there anything like in your art making process that you have to have, like a special paint cup or a special palette knife, or?
This is my special palette knife. I do have others, but when this breaks, that may be it, I'm telling you. And I almost,
hang it up. You're done.
I own others this size, but this one just, you know, they have the tip is springy, and it's just got the right amount of everything in it. So, and music, I don't have to listen to music, but I almost always do. It really, you know what the flow state is?
Mhm.
That timeless, you know, I get in my studio and I have a good idea going, and I get this knife and ECM on the stereo, and I'm in the flow state, you know, pretty regularly, not always, but it's pretty regularly. You set it up that way and make it easier for it to happen, and it does happen. So it'd be music, pretty important.
That makes sense. So is there a gallery or a museum that you would love to have your work featured in?
Seriously, yeah, a museum with my name on it would be good, but I could I could be in any number of galleries in Santa Fe on Canyon Road, I would think. I actually was in one briefly last year, so I'm getting close, but Yeah, Santa Fe, I think would be a wonderful experience, which could yet happen. We'll see. Not any particular gallery. The one I wanted to be in is closed,
Oh,
sadly. So we'll see.
no.
But there are others.
So this is the question that I find most interesting and that I've been asking some of the artists is, how do you know when a work is finished?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not even sure I have, you know, an answer for. I'm not sure. You look at these paintings and I'm not even 100% sure they are finished. You know, for what I do, I could take some of these and keep going. You know, I mean, the whole thing is for me somewhat of an experiment, not completely an experiment, but you know, there's a lot of possibilities with all of this. And so you just have to say, you know, you look at it, it just seems to be this sort of intuitive, like just this perfect balance between the colors and the open background and the focal point, and just it's sort of this grand balance between everything. And I think, okay, you know, this would be, I don't know if it's done, but it could be, this would just be a really good place to stop. I think I read somewhere, people were talking about there is such a thing as working 90% harder to make it 10% better. That isn't worth doing. So there is something to be said for maybe quitting a little on the sooner side. You know, could always go and work on it some more. It's hard to unwork on it, you know. It's hard to go backwards when you overdo it. And then you wish you were, you know, at that earlier version of it, which is kind of impossible to get back to. So stopping a little sooner, maybe even a little sooner than you think it is done is a pretty good approach.
Okay.
Mhm.
So then for our final question, for a little, self-promotion, where can we find your work?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm quite a bit in the Oliver Arts Center. And, this show will be over in a couple, 3 days. But I'm in here for various shows. And I'm in the Twisted Fish Gallery in Elk Rapids year-round. And I'm in the Sleeping Bear Gallery in Empire in the summer season. I currently have work in the Denos Museum shop. I'll probably be in there for quite a while. And you can also, there are some pieces for sale on my website, priced on my website. And you could purchase them right off there at rongianola.com. I think that's about it for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that finishes up our 20 questions. Is there anything
Yeah.
else you wanted to
Great.
add that we didn't get to?
Not really. I think we kind of covered the spectrum there. Those are good questions. That's a good.
Yeah. We thought it was a little fun. And I
Yeah.
appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking me. It was a
Absolutely.
lot of fun.
Yeah,
Wait.
absolutely. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you very much, Ron.
Yeah. Thank you. See ya.